Good afternoon. Welcome back to Cool Your Heels with Lillian Caldwell at AMFM247.com and PassionateWorldTalkRadio.com, the world in your hands. And today, our special guest is Kiser, who's written a book called In Saving Africa from Lies That Kill, How Myths about the environment and overpopulation are destroying third world countries. So good afternoon, Kay. How are you doing this rainy day?
I'm doing well. Hope you're fine.
I'm doing fine too. So could you please tell everybody why you decided you needed to write a book about Africa?
Well, actually, that's my second book in the modern mythology series, and it should have just been on environment, but as I started looking into it, I found the abuses that were going on with the African countries and felt that was more important to pursue at that time.
So when did you first discover that it wasn't so much the propaganda that the United Nations and the wealthy nations were putting out why Africa and other third world countries like Africa was failing, but it was something so basic that they completely overlooked it?
Yes, part of the problem with Africa is old attitudes, wrong attitudes that have been carried through for the last 200 years. And the attitude that those people are inferior, they're incapable of doing better, that we just need to pat them on the head and take care of them, rather than help them to enter the 21st century like the rest of us are.
But isn't this attitude fostered by the white colonists who moved into Africa, like the Dutch, for example, who pretty much took over their country
Well,
and adapted it to their needs and not so much the needs of the original people?
that was part of it, but it goes much deeper than that. It actually originated in the 18th century with Thomas Malthus. He wrote a book called An Essay on the Principle of Population. And he, at the time, the population of the world was under 1 billion. And he claimed that it was overpopulated and that we needed to essentially starve out the poor people. He credited war and plagues and that sort of thing with limiting the population. And along with that, went his feeling that these people were inferior, that these are the people that we can get rid of because they're inferior, and that included the poor people in his own country. And along with that was the um, utopian socialist, which was a part of the underpinning of his thought there. And of course, um, sorry, it was, I'm sorry, what's my thought? It was the environmental damage that he felt that these people would do. What he didn't realize was that what he thought was that in order to grow more food, that you had to increase the number of acres under cultivation. He did not foresee any improvement in agriculture. And of course, we know that that was, with orders of magnitude more now with modern agriculture. Unfortunately, a lot of Africa are still doing the subsistence agriculture, which is very low yield, very high work intensive. And so, they're still in the state that the world was in the 18th century, basically. And, there's a lot of needs that are being denied them because of this. One of the problems with Africa, however, is foreign aid. And what foreign aid is doing is propping up dictators, and most of that money is not getting to the people that need it. It's not getting to the building of the infrastructure and so forth. Back in the 1960s, the communist influence in Africa encouraged those nations to become independent before they were ready. But part of that also was that the colonial powers had not developed the infrastructure that they should have for the people there. As you say, they were more interested in their own interests, and so they did not develop that infrastructure or the people to govern themselves. So then when the communists came in and they convinced them to overthrow their masters, which, was a good thing in the sense, but it was before they were ready. And so they have been struggling with that ever since. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it also seems to me that the people who were in power should have gone out and really taken stock of the type of land that they were dealing with. I mean, you see this happen in practically every civilization. Russia did it with the communes. I mean, before that, the Tsars had the nobles, and they were making food and creating food off the vast land that they owned. But when the communists came in and set up the communes, they couldn't duplicate or follow what was done. The same thing happened in South America, where they cleared land to plant crops, but they find that after a year or two, they might as well just salt the earth because they can't use it anymore. There are no nutrients. And this type of experiment, I mean, even in China, they have vast land that's being farmed by farmers who've been on that land for over 1,000 years. And yet, even they are having trouble producing the type of record crops they need. And we faced it during the Depression. And it doesn't seem like anybody really has learned any lessons from any of this.
Well, actually, a lot of the lessons that were learned are not being applied. It's been more political than scientific. Back in the 1960s, there was a thing called the Green Revolution, and in that they developed higher yield crops and a science of agriculture where you could use certain kinds of fertilizers and so forth, and intercropping and that sort of thing in order to raise the yield and not have to clear more land in order to grow more. The problem with deforestation is what they call subsistence farming, which is that they, as you say, they deplete the land with a year or two of crops, and then they have to clear another patch to go on. With modern agriculture, you don't have to do that. You don't see them doing that in Iowa with corn. They have corn and soybeans and that sort of thing being raised in abundance year after year after year, and the reason is that they have adopted the modern agricultural methods. Organic farming is okay if you can afford it, but the people in Africa, they really need all of the advantages that they can get to grow as much crops as they can. And a lot of people have prevented that. There are actually organizations out there that are trying to prevent them from doing modern agriculture. And as a matter of fact, are trying to talk them into giving it up when they've already adopted it. And that is absolutely wrong to insist that they go back to bare subsistence farming whenever this other method can produce much more yield and still preserve the land.
I think in Africa, their biggest problem is water. They don't have enough of it. And a lot of the continent is covered by a desert, which apparently is still growing and taking over a lot of the places that used to be lush and can grow. And it seems to me that it'd make a lot better sense if they could focus on what grows within that type of climate and what type of soil, than keep on repeating some of the mistakes that clearly does not work. I mean, they're having the same problems in South America with cutting down the rainforest, and the rainforest is so lush and abundant, but yet when they grow crops, it doesn't go anywhere at all to feed even the family who's on it, let alone a whole community.
That's right. Yes. So there is a need there for matching the crops with the land. You're absolutely right. And part of that is education. the African continent needs a lot in the way of education. And as a matter of fact, in the sense of healthcare and of defeating some of these diseases that they are so prone to. One of the things now, you may not agree with this. Most people get very upset when I say this, but DDT has had a bad rap. And the reason that DDT was banned, Rachel Carson lied. Everything that she said was wrong. All of the research since then has shown that it's harmless, and it is actually safer to use than the other insecticides that have replaced it. Malaria keeps Africa down. Malaria is a big draw on the manpower in that country, because the U.S. What happened was that the U.S. banned DDT after the evidence showed that it was harmless. You still hear that it is a great poison and that it's a carcinogen and all that. None of that's true. Okay, the reason it was banned was to limit population. It's all about population control. And so if we got the EPA to let up on it and say, yeah, we were wrong, this really is okay, and start using DDT over there, they could take that malaria down to practically nothing. As a matter of fact, it was done in this country. And malaria occurred as far north as Siberia, all over Europe and America, before DDT. They used it for about 30 years, and it eliminated all of that. And then after that was done, Rachel Carson wrote her book, and they decided, well, we want to get rid of this. And that was also at the time that Paul Ehrlich wrote the book Population Bomb, in which he claimed that the world was overpopulated. Well, Malthus 200 years ago said it was overpopulated. Darwin said it was overpopulated. What were some of those others? Marx and Sanger and Hitler, all of them were into population control of one type or another, particularly what they call eugenics, which is improving, quote unquote, improving the human race by selective breeding. Basically, they would eliminate people they considered inferior from breeding, and that was supposed to improve the human species. But all of that was about an assumption that the world was overpopulated. At just over 7.5 billion people, the world is nowhere near overpopulated. What do you mean by overpopulation? Is it no food? Is it environmental damage? What is it that overpopulation implies? There's no real definition of that.
That's why we're going to Mars.
Good luck.
You know that. You know that's why we're going to Mars.
With the radiation. No, we're going to Mars in order to prop up NASA, okay?
Yes, and the same reason why we're going to the moon, so we can strip it of all its natural resources.
Right,
because there's no place else left on this planet for the race to go. So you have to push out. I mean, all you have to do is study your history. It tells you everything that you need to know.
But overpopulation is a myth.
And look at what happened on Easter Island. Looked at some of the civilizations over in the middle of the rainforest. They died because they overpopulated. And people just don't want to pay attention because it scares them. And they're thinking, well, who's going to be on first? Who's going to follow?
Actually, overpopulation is a myth, and overpopulation, if it did exist, is not the reason for environmental harm. It is poverty. It is people who are not knowledgeable enough to take care of their resources.
That's it. Or don't want to take care of proper resources. I mean, when they came over to the New World, they had a chance to start all over again. They didn't.
Yeah, but the problem is with poverty, and the problem with Africa is that we're propping up a bunch of dictators who are not supporting their people, who, as a matter of fact, are allowing these activists to come in and destroy what little that those people have. And what we need to do is to replace foreign aid with investment. We need to get companies in there. We need to put those people to work. In order to put those people to work, we have to have a healthy workforce, and that means bringing back DDT and doing some other things like that that improves their health. Clean water is a big deal over there. Even the people that have plenty of water, the water is unsafe. And so in my book, I show how the water can be purified by the people there if they're just taught how. Many of the people in rural Africa have no concept of germs. So they do not know that something invisible can make them sick. So they give their children river water without even filtration. And so what we need to do is to go over there and educate those people as to, this is what's making you sick. It's not the witch doctor. It's, it's not any kind of witchcraft. It's actually these little things you can't see. And here is how you can clean up your water. One of the cute things that UNESCO is advocating is purification of water by sunlight. You take a soda bottle, like a 2-liter soda bottle, fill it full of water. Of course, you've filtered it first so that it's not cloudy. You put it up on the roof for 10 hours and it's pure, because the UV coming from the sun is purifying that water, but it takes 8 to 10 hours to do that. And so you just keep a row of these bottles going on your roof and you have clean water. Of course, there are other ways too. The sand filter is the big thing that people can use for cooking and washing and all sorts of things. The other thing that a lot of them don't realize is that using raw feces on their gardens is spreading disease. And also things like flies. Of course, flies and DDT goes hand in hand together too. But all of those things need to be taught to these people, and they can do them themselves. It's just a matter of teaching them what they don't know, basically. But,
so, Kay, could you please tell everybody where they can find you and your book and how they can get in touch with you or maybe get involved so that they can make a difference?
Okay.
Nothing else, maybe persuade the UN to do things a little bit differently in Africa?
Right. My book is available on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, in the bookstores. Some of them have it, some of them don't have it yet. But the last 2 chapters there give specifics of what can be done. The last chapter tells what you can do as an individual. You can donate to people that are investing in Africa. And I give resources where you can check out the charities to see if they are good charities or not. There are some organizations, all that's in there, the ones that I recommend. But also there is financial information in there about stock markets, about which countries are the most and least corrupt in Africa. And all of that is in the book. So if they buy the book, they can see those resources, including my website.
So before we go away and stray, Anonymous had this to say: knowledge, sense, honesty, learning, good behavior are the chief things towards making a man's fortune, next to interest and opportunity. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, Kay. I really enjoyed it. And there's a lot more to be discussed about your book. I think people ought to go out and get it, because I really believe that they don't really know what's going on. and that what if you don't know what's going on, that's what's going to kill you.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can hear this video all over again with Kay, this interview next Tuesday from 8 to 9 p.m. on AMFM247.com, on passionateworldtalkradio.com, https:// youtube.com, Passionate World Radio Network LLC, facebook.com/Passionate World, googleplus.com/PWR Network LLC, and all the other media outlets. Thank you all very much for showing up today and listening and viewing this video. And please come back and join us again.
Okay, we done?
Just a sec.